Hello and welcome back to the Ain't Dead Yet podcast. Glad to have you guys here today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Right now, this season of life, we're trying to release one episode per month. That's the goal. A lot of other things happening in life, and it's been probably 6 weeks since we've been in here. The podcast that we're recording today, we kind of knew it was coming. We talked about it, and it really just needed to make sense timing wise for a lot of reasons, and you'll understand as we dive into this today. And we just ask for the audience's patience and grace as we work through it. It's going to be a difficult conversation, but the root of the conversation is in a beautiful place. Meaning, we're here today to have this conversation to hopefully help somebody that might be struggling or having a hard time. And sometimes in order to do that, you gotta go to some dark places and carve out some dark corners. And so we just ask for your patience and grace as we work through that today. But I want to introduce today's guest. His name's Derrick Balderas. And to tell this story and really get into it, I think we got to start with how we met, because it's really random.
Yeah, it is.
So September of 2025, I was in my own season of life, figuring some things out, and I made this decision that, I love Gary Allen. He's a country music singer and plays a lot of, honestly, like pretty sad songs.
Yeah.
I think a lot of his music's actually rooted in him losing his wife. So he plays some really sad music. It's touching stuff. It's beautiful. It helps you connect with some of those things. And either way, I was going through that kind of season of life. And like I said, I love Gary Allen. And I said, I saw he was going to be playing close to the house, and it's an outdoor venue. And I was like, man, I need to get out of the house more. Probably March, April through September of last year, maybe even probably August, I buried myself in work, training, and that's really about it. If my eyes were open, I was doing one of those two things. And that's how I deal with struggle and challenge. I have a really hard time if I'm struggling with something being still. I'm working on it, still working on it, but something I struggle with. So, I people, my friends around me, like, you need to get out of the house and you go do something, have a good time, whatever. And I said, all right. So either way, I got a solo ticket to the Gary Allen concert, and long story short, I go to this concert. I walk in. I'm feeling awkward as hell because I'm there by myself. You know what I mean? I'm looking around. There's all these like couples and people on their first date or their 20th date, whatever. And I'm like, damn, this is depressing. This is sad as hell. I'm just like, I'm that guy. But I was trying to find my way and find a way to enjoy the music. And so I remember, those that listen to the show know that I don't drink, but most of these venues do non-alcoholic beers. And so the other people that know me or been out with me know that I drink non-alcoholic beers like they're real beers.
Yeah.
Like I'll double fist them. I'll carry around 2-3 at a time, set them on the ground. I've always got multiple ones on me. Just like these energy drinks, I can't have one.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of like walking around this venue and listening to music. And it's kind of, to understand the venue, the stage is in the center down at the bottom of this hill. And then there's like VIP seating, if you will, which is just like gated pit seating. And then there's general admission. General admission is just like this kind of field, and the field backs all the way up to like the indoor venue that's got like a bar and stuff, and they've got some food vendors. So I'm just kind of walking around, and I'm in the general admission portion, and I see this guy, and he's got on a BPN hat. And for those of you that don't know, BPN is just Bear Performance Nutrition, based out of Austin, Texas. Started by a veteran, Nick Bear. Good company, you know what I mean? Very involved with the fitness community in Austin. And he tells a good story on YouTube, and I think a lot of people can connect with kind of the way he pushes himself. And so I saw the hat, and they're everywhere around Austin. If you're around here, you would know that. People got on BPN stuff all the time. But for some reason, it was like, I'm gonna say hi. I'm gonna introduce myself, kind of thing. Walk over there, maybe be awkward for a minute, whatever. And I think the origination of the conversation, I was like, oh, I like your hat kind of thing. And I was like, I have the Go One More tattoo.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of
how
how
it started.
it started. And we kind of just sat there and had a conversation. We talked about a lot of things, but really the conversation was centered around jiu-jitsu. You know, I noticed, you know, dude had tatted up, pretty good build. I saw your ear, you know what I mean? I was like, all right, you know, I'm getting into this new thing.
Yeah.
So we started having this conversation. He starts telling me about his experiences competing at different levels and finding success at those levels. And so naturally at this point, like I'm intrigued, like I want to learn more. I want to connect. And I felt like, you know, to have this random occurrence, like, and, oh, this guy does jiu-jitsu. Like, this is probably going to be my buddy. Like, I thought like, man, this is God, like linking us up for jiu-jitsu stuff or whatever. And so we kind of stood there and talked for a while. I got to meet his wife, and we didn't exchange numbers. We just exchanged Instagrams. We're like, oh, you got Instagram kind of thing. And so
Follow each other.
yeah, followed each other. And I remember coming home, I called my mom. I do remember this. And she was like, you know, how was it? And I was like, well, I think I made a friend, you know, this guy, he does jiu-jitsu. He's down in San Antonio. It's kind of close to the house. You know, maybe I'll go train with him sometime. And she's like, oh, that's cool. And either way, life goes on, right? Like, wake up the next day. It certainly wasn't the first thing on my mind. It was just like, awesome that happened. And then, you know, things kind of happened. Then you ended up hitting me up to see if I wanted to come roll.
Yeah.
Down in San Antonio at Jiu-Jitsu Syndicate.
Yes, sir.
Which is a great gym. Shout out to them. I love 10th Planet too. Obviously, I get the hat on, but shout out to Syndicate. Man, he invited me down, and it was really awesome. That environment was really great. Super welcoming. The guy that was there that day, I want to say his name was Chris.
Chris Edgar. No, Chris Easter's the owner.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then Edgar was there as well, so there's two owners. Yeah.
It's crazy welcoming though. Like, just like, hey,
guys.
Yeah, you're welcome here, man. Anytime you're in the area, because I told them I'm down there for work sometimes, and they're like, anytime you're in the area and just want to swing through and roll, like, come on. And like, you know, I feel like a lot of people might say that, but I felt that, you know what I mean? That they were like, they were serious. And so that ended up being like a great session. Got some good rolls. You showed me a lot of things. Obviously, me being green in the game, which AKA translates to like white belt.
Yeah.
You know, if you've done jiu-jitsu, you kind of know like that level when you're getting into it, especially that early on for me. I really didn't have anything. I didn't know what I was doing. You know what I mean? Just lost. And so it's nice to have someone you can roll with that's not going to hurt you, but they'll mentor you and talk to you as they're going. And it also worked out well because we're a similar frame and size.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't just go in there and use brute strength to like put myself in positions. That wasn't going to work. So I learned a lot that day. And I do think that experience alone was what helped me in my first competition. Just little things that you kind of showed me that day, because I hadn't rolled with anyone my size, and I really didn't roll with anyone my size up until the competition. So
I think we talked about that after you won.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It helped me a lot.
Maintaining pressure, stuff like that.
Yeah. Using what you have, you know what I mean? And what you're given. It's a lot more of using what you're given than just constantly trying to take things.
Oh, 100%.
And so I got to learn that with rolling with you. So that was an awesome experience. And yeah, we rolled and kind of, I think, you know, we both you were on nights maybe at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so like you rolled and you were like, yeah, I'm gonna try to squeeze a nap or some food. Then I got to go work. And I got off work, you know, grinding. Yeah. For those of you who haven't said this yet, so you're a law enforcement officer.
Yes, sir.
And did you get into that career? You're also a veteran. Did you get directly into that career?
No. So funny story about the concert, right?
Yeah.
So I hate concerts. I hate it, but my wife loves concerts. And so it's been a while since we went to a concert, and I was like, let's go to a Gary Allan concert because I love old country. She is not really a huge fan. Like, she'd rather go to a different concert, right? But she's like, okay. So she got her concert thrill, and then I got my Gary Allan thrill. So for us just to be there that night was rare because I don't like going to concerts. So yeah, so I mean, just to be there and then like standing there by myself in the grass, Letty went to the restroom, and then here comes this big dude with like tattoos. And so like the same thing, I'm like, okay, he works out. You know, he has to be doing something that I enjoy as well, at least like working out.
Yeah.
So yeah, so the conversation, like meeting you was easy, and then it went to jiu-jitsu. But going into law enforcement, no. So my dad is a retired police officer. So I grew up with I grew up around officers my entire life. So when I joined the military and I got out, I knew I wanted to go into that profession. But after getting out and my deployments and stuff, I kind of like needed a break. And then me and Letty had just gotten together. We just got married, and she doesn't come from a law enforcement background, so she was kind of hesitant on whether or not she wanted me to join. You know, she wanted me to be home, you know, when we start our family and stuff like that. And I try to tell her, like, my dad coached me in all my sports, you know, growing up. He was there for everything. You know, he may not be there like Christmas morning, but he'll be there Christmas evening, right? It's not like the military where you're gone for months at a time. So I did some recruiting work, IT recruiting, and then I went to do some cybersecurity work. And so I was working remote, sitting at home, making good money, and I hated it. Oh my God, I'm not the remote sitting at home like guy. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I talked to a buddy who was already an officer. I said, hey man, like shoot me your schedule. I want to show my wife. So I showed her, we talked about it, and then she finally said, you know what, let's go ahead and do it. So not long after that, I left that job, and then the academy started probably a month or two later, and then that's kind of how I got into it. So yeah, about 2 years after I got out is when I started the academy.
I got you. Yes, you had a little bit of a transition period, and then you got kind of right into. What year did you get into law enforcement?
April of 2020.
April of 2020.
Yep.
Damn, right when COVID hit.
Right when COVID. Yeah. I was kind of worried. I wasn't sure if they were going to hire us or like what they were going to do. But yeah, right when it hit.
Right. Yeah, I mean, just kind of getting to know you now and getting to follow along with your drive and kind of how you move through things. I think that, you know, they would have been crazy not to hire you. You know what I mean? I think that you bring a lot to the table as far as like not just your stature, but your mentality, right? I think that it's rare as far as how you push yourself and the things that you're willing to do. And so, yeah, I think it's probably a good fit for you. Are you happy in that career? Do you think it's a long-term thing, or?
I have a love-hate relationship with law enforcement. So growing up, you know, always seeing it, joining the military, serving, I love the profession. I love serving the community. I love helping the community because I train so much and the type of person I am, you know, I think I bring a lot of benefit. And so I've always had the philosophy of, you know, be the officer that you want coming to save your kids or you want coming to save, you know, your wife, you know, be that person. And so that's what I strive to be. But man, the politics around like law enforcement, the toxic leadership, the incompetency of leadership is just, it's draining.
Yeah.
It drains you. And, you know, this is why we see a lot of issues in law enforcement, like across the country. And, you know, it isn't just one department. It's something that plagues departments all over the country. And so that's the hate part of law enforcement. You know, what I always say, what made me successful, that hard charging, the competitiveness, the training part, you know, pushing myself, that's what made me successful in the military. That's what got me my rank quick. That's what got me my positions. Like, that's what got me to be like, hey, you know, you're the go-to leader on missions and stuff. Then you transition to like civilian world, and it's like the opposite. What made me successful in the military almost hinders me in law enforcement because you don't have that environment. You don't have officers that want to push themselves. You don't have leadership that values that because they're not that type of person. So they're almost, I don't want to say scared of you because I don't think they're scared. It just doesn't translate well, you know? And so you have to really adapt and change your mindset. But then again, like, I am who I am, you know? Like, I cannot just put my head down and clock in and clock out. And so that's the part that really I struggle with in the profession. But as far as policing, I mean, where I police here in Texas, like, community's great. We have a lot of support, you know, so that's the part I love.
It's interesting you bring that up. I was talking to a friend who's also in law enforcement, and he's like, there's three types of cops. He's like, there's the guy that like wants everyone to know that they're a cop. Like, that's why he's in it. There's the guy that like, he's very focused, call it 9 to 5, even though I know that's not the shift, but like that's,
no.
And then there's the guy that's like very focused on shift, and then outside of shift, he's still like striving to find ways to be better at his job. And I think you're the last one, right? I look at the kind of the things that you do. I mean, we talked in the parking lot, but you just left a training today.
Yeah.
You're on the mats, you're rolling in jiu-jitsu, you're training your body, you're training your mind, you're working on and working through things that like most people aren't ever going to face. And I think all of those things make you better at your job. Because, if I ever needed help, I would want you to show up. I've seen some of the guys that show up around where I live, and I'm like, I wouldn't even call. What was the point of that? You know what I mean? That's not going to help. And I love that you can call it out. That's something that I respect in that community, because it is a brotherhood, sisterhood, family type thing. But like with any family, there's bullshit that happens. And I respect that you're always willing to be like, there's things that aren't great about it. There's things that need to be improved upon. You're not just trying to like skim over it and say like, it's never our fault or never our problem. It's kind of like you find accountability and you place it in the right places, even if it's yours to take. Yeah. And I respect that about you and how you handle your career. So.
Oh, 100%. Like, I mean, I understand why people don't like cops. I don't like cops at times, because you do see that, the cops that aren't there for the right reasons. They just want the badge and the gun. But I think for the most part, the majority of cops want to do the right thing. They want to serve their community, but it's just creating a different mindset that, hey, yes, it's good that you want to do the job, but that has responsibilities that go with it. Like, you need to be physically fit. You need to be able to control somebody, to shoot, to make sound decisions. Like, know your case law, know your authority. Like, there's so much involved with being a cop that, the training can never stop. And what happens is people leave the academy and then that's it, you know? But I mean, the shift works hard, you have family life and you're working side jobs to make more money and you're just tired, So, I mean, it is a grind. It is a grind. And I mean, it definitely has hindered my family life to do what I do. So, on the outside, you saying those things that you see in me, well, I have a difficulty balancing my career and then my home life, my responsibilities. And then that's something that, the past 2 or 3 years has really hit me hard. And then it definitely hit me hard this past year, like losing my son. And so, the perspective is now switched. But at the end of the day, to be successful at anything, it takes work. And so, there's going to be sacrifices.
Yeah.
And it's just finding that balance. And I think that's something that every man struggles with. And I thought, and the more we have more children and time goes on, it just gets harder. Like if you're single, it's easy.
Yeah.
Then you get a significant other, it gets a little harder. Then you have kids, it gets a little harder. And so you hope that, by the time that happens, you kind of set yourself on a path that you don't have to sacrifice as much. But I came into policing at 35 years old, so I wasn't young. And so my mentality was, man, I need to catch up because I'm not going to be young forever. And there's so many things I want to do in this profession, but I have like a timetable because I'm not going to be wanting to run and gun and be physical forever. And so I think that's where the first 4 years I really focused on the profession and let it just consume me full time. And so, that's where you start having the issues at home with the balancing and stuff like that and neglecting areas. But I'm successful at work, but I'm not successful at home. And so, it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I mean, the profession's great,
Yeah. No, I think it's interesting, and it also plays into the story we're about to talk through, that profession specifically, and kind of the things that are dealt with on a regular basis by people that work in those professions. And, they already have to handle and manage those things internally.
Yeah.
And to have to do that and then have, something additional happen in your own personal life that you have to figure out a way to live with, right? It adds layers to that cake of weight that you're carrying around. And so, you kind of mentioned it, and it kind of ties into where we were leading with the story. But, we had that connection. we met at the concert. We rolled together. Both of us kind of just like living life, doing, you know, whatever we're doing. And, you know, I do remember vividly. Have you ever seen something, you know, on Instagram and you kind of see it and you're like, excuse my French, but you're kind of like, wait, what the fuck? Has that ever happened to you?
Yeah.
That was kind of, I mean, I'll just tell you, that was my honest, like, first reaction to what we're about to talk about.
Yeah. It just happened to me a couple of days ago.
Yeah. You see something and you're just like, it does not register.
Yeah.
That was more or less my experience getting into this. And I just remembered someone had made a post and you'd either shared it on your story or you like collabed on the post. And I remember seeing it and being like, it's not calculating.
Yeah.
And I think it's, you know, this is where the story and these things get difficult to talk about, but this is why I think we're here. And I think this is important. You know, do you, as we work through this and when you think about like what we're about to work through, what was like the first thing that registered? You know, you mentioned it, so that we got to walk into it. But like you said, you lost your son this year. When that happened, what was the first thing that registered in your mind?
Well, we didn't lose him like right away. So on Halloween night of last year, he was in an accident. So you get the phone call, and not even the phone call. I called him, and I got some lady on the phone, and you know I said, "Hey, can I speak to Christian?" And she's like, "Did they call you?" And I'm like, "No, why?" She's like, "Christian's been in an accident, and he's being airlifted to the hospital." And so, I immediately was pissed off. Like, what the F, you know, why didn't anyone call me? Why, you know, and she didn't know. She was just in a stand-in. She was just there. She didn't know anything really, so it wasn't her fault. But that was my immediate, like, reaction. And so I don't even know what I was truly thinking that moment. I didn't know if he was, what hospital he was going to. I didn't know anything. I just knew, like, I had to get to him. And so I grabbed my keys, told my wife, and left immediately. We had just gotten back from trick-or-treating and stuff. I took my daughter out. My in-laws were there. My mom was there. And Christian's last football game was the next day on Saturday morning. It was his homecoming game. So my mom was packing up some cookies for him and stuff from Halloween, and we were all going to get up and go to the game like the next day. And so I wanted to call him and talk to him, and that's when it started. But I mean, that moment was just, at that moment, I didn't think it was serious. I guess. I mean, I didn't think, oh, he's gonna die or anything crazy. It was just a shock. Like, it's the phone call where, you know, I've been naive to think, oh, this will never happen to me, but I do it for a living. Like, I've gone and told a spouse, hey, you know, your husband is dead. You know, I've been on scene where children have died. I've been on scene where, you know, people have died. So, and it happens in a blink of an eye. And I've seen it numerous times. So I know how fragile life is. I know how it can just be changed in like a split second. I just didn't think it ever happened to me. So I don't think it really registered with me immediately at that second.
I asked that question for a reason, and you described it kind of how I thought you would, meaning anyone that's been through any sort of like, call it deeply traumatic event, right? In that moment, at least in my experience, for me, the things that I've been through, I didn't have control over my thoughts and feelings, really. It was just like time. It was like time went really fast and really slow, and I just wasn't there. And I was just trying to like move, right? And it was like trying to do something and trying to just sometimes worthless energy, right? Like putting it in the wrong place and then putting it in the right place and being mad, and this wave of emotions that you go through. And you know, I think to boil it down, like there's not a lot of control in those moments, right? Because especially if you're not near, Like it's not in your home,
Yeah.
right? It's somewhere else. You have to figure out where that somewhere else is at, and then you have to figure out how to get there. It's kind of like the word mayhem keeps coming to mind. Like just kind of like,
I don't know if it was mayhem. So I don't know where I learned this. I think in 2006 when I deployed to Iraq, I had a leader, a sergeant. He was my squad leader, and he was always so calm. Like he never let anything get to him. He was always calm, and I think maybe that's where I picked up maybe that part of the leadership or like the mindset, and on top of just the person I am. But even when I'm in the military and like in firefights, I was always calm. I was never just going crazy. I could always think. I was never, and so when I got the call, yeah, it shocked me. I was pissed, but I immediately went into like police mode.
mm-hmm.
You know, I'm his father. I'm the head of his life. You know, I need to figure this out for his mom, Letty, my wife. And so I just left. And then on the drive there, I was calling dispatch. I was trying to figure out what was going on. And because I know the system, being a cop, I knew how to get the information I needed. So I wasn't even thinking so much, I guess, the possibility that Christian could die, or just more so, hey, I need to get the information and I need to get to him. So, you know, I'm going 100 plus miles an hour on the highway and I'm calling dispatch. And I don't know what dispatch office he's at, but I know I can call Kerrville PDs on dispatch and they can figure it out from there. And so I was doing that. They transferred me to another dispatch. I was talking to that dispatcher, you know, getting them information. All right, hey, he's being flown out. I knew just based on my experience, okay, he could be flown to San Antonio. He could go to Kerrville. I don't know. But in my head, I was like, he's probably going to be flown into San Antonio because that's where the bigger hospital's at. And if he's already in the air, then that's where they're probably going to take him. If they're going to drive him in an ambulance, well, then they may take him to Kerrville. So I kind of already knew he was going to be in the medical center. But those are things I'm thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not at that moment is just get the information. So I'm not really thinking about him. I'm not scared. I'm not losing control. I'm driving 100 plus miles an hour, but I'm able to focus. Okay, I got the information. I call his mom, tell her, hey, this is where we're going. I call my mom. I call my wife. Hey, this is where we're going. I need you to come. So I was able to do everything I needed to do to make sure that we knew what to do. And I don't know where I get that from. But you know, that's who I am, even as an officer. You know, I never get, you know, crazy on scene. I'm always like, able to think. So yeah, at that point, it was all just mission focused and get there.
You were organized.
Organized, yeah.
And I think, well, I mean, speaking from someone who's been a civilian their whole life, me, I think with like I can't imagine how I would react in that situation. I can tell you it wouldn't be like that. I wouldn't know who to call.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know to call dispatch, right? So I'm thinking about like that, you know, any other person going through that, like they're not going to know who to call. They're not going to have that like type of pressure regulation where they can be in the moment and not overreact. So I think that, I mean, that part was a blessing that you were able to just lock in.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I remember calling his mom, Brittany, saying, you know, hey, he's going to the hospital. Don't worry, he's going to be okay. You know, calm down. You know, don't drive crazy. Just get to the hospital safe and get there. You know, I was able to tell her that, you know, calm her down. But I mean, there was a point in time on that drive where I lost it. But that was after everything was done. It was now. Information's out. I just have to get there. So now I have a little stretch of like to think now. Think about the possibilities of, is he going to be okay? I have no clue what happened. And so that's kind of where I probably lost control. But it was by myself in the truck. And then once I got to the hospital, then it was back to mission focus. And so, yeah. Yeah.
So you get to the hospital, and I mean, obviously, assuming you're the first family member there.
Yeah.
Who's the first person you talk to?
So he went to
Doctors?
university. So they have a children's hospital, and they have the adults. So, you know, Christian was 14 years old. So I went to the ER children's door and ran inside and said, "Hey, my son Christian's coming in." And the person at the desk, I looked up and said, "Hey, he's going to the adult," and which is the doors are just next door. So I ran there, went inside, talked to the nurse. The first one I said, "Hey, my son's being flown in. What do I need? I need to go." And so they, they looked up on the computer and talked to some people and escorted me back to the trauma center where he was going to be at. And on the drive there, I had saw a helicopter coming in, Air Life, and I thought that was my son. And so I was pissed because he was going to be there before I got there. And so, but come to find out, that wasn't him. So the whole time I'm thinking he's already there. But once they got me to where I needed to be, then the doctor told me, "Hey, he's not here yet." And so it was the trauma unit. You have the regular hospital, but then the trauma unit has two double doors, and you go in there. So they brought me in there, and a doctor comes to me and says, "Hey, Christian is being flown in, and we don't know his status." And so I know, again, because my experience, that they're going to get an update. They're going to get paramedics on the ground or talking to doctors at the hospital and prepping them on their patient so they know what to do when that patient arrives. And so I told the doctor, I was like, I asked, I think it was a female, the first one. I was like, "Is my son alive?" And they said yes. And so that kind of gave me some relief because I knew they had to have a status. And so they said yes. And so that's kind of where I had some relief at that moment. All right. And then it was a waiting game from there.
I got you. So, and then how long did you have to wait before you knew he'd arrived?
Man, it was probably 30 minutes, 45 minutes. So during that time, there's a group of nurses and doctors, and I know he's alive, but I'm like, "Hey, tell me what's going on. I know y'all know." And so at a moment, they're kind of not telling me. They're like, "We don't know." And so finally I told them, I said, "Listen, I'm a police officer. I know how this works. I don't know exactly how it works with y'all, but I know you have updates on patients because y'all have to get prepped for them to come in. I can handle it. Just tell me." Because in my mind, I was like, I need to mentally prepare for what I'm about to go through. That way I can be prepared for everyone else that's coming. And so that's when they told me, "Hey, he suffered a bad head injury and some other injuries, but he's alive right now." And so I was like, "Okay, thank you." And I wasn't yelling. That's exactly how I told them. Just like this. Again, I don't know how I'm able to stay so calm, but I'm talking to him like this. And I know that if I go crazy, they're going to shut me out. So the best course of action is to just stay calm, be polite, and they'll give me some information. And so they told me that, and a nurse escorted me out to the hallway to wait. And I think that nurse was she was part of the chaplain. And so she's asking me, "Do I need anything? Can I call somebody?" Just doing what they would do to help out family. And I said, "No, I'm fine." I'm texting my wife, texting Christian's mom, letting them know exactly where to go, where we're at, giving them updates, calling my dad. And so we're waiting, and I'm waiting. And again, when I got the first initial phone call, they said, "Hey, Christian's on a helicopter being airlifted to the hospital." So from my house to the hospital was probably, and this is running 100 plus, was about a 20-minute drive. And then I'm already in the hospital. I'm like, "Where is he? What is taking so long? Y'all said he was in the air." From helicopter ride to where he was at to the hospital can't be any more than 15 minutes, in the air. And so now I'm getting like pissed off. Like, where is he? And come to find out later on is it took 45 minutes to stabilize him before they could take off. So they didn't think he was going to live to make the flight, but they were able to stabilize him in the helicopter, and then they took off. So that's what was taking so long for them to get there. And I mean, I didn't know that at the time, so it's just a waiting game. But yeah, just a waiting game, and then I'm updating the family, and then the nurse said, "Hey, they're about to land, and he's going to be coming through those double doors." And so I'm like, okay, and I'm waiting, and those doors open, and you had paramedics around the stretcher. They're bringing him in, and all I see is just Christian's face is just covered in blood, and he has a bandage wrapped around his head, and I could just tell him like, "Hey, bud, I'm here, like, Dad's here," and so I followed him into the trauma center, and that's where they take him into, I guess, the ER room, and then from there. That ER room was like glass windows, so I could see in, but I was in the hallway, and it was just chaos, but it was controlled chaos. And I remember at the time, and again, I don't even know how I'm thinking about stuff like this. You have paramedics, you have nurses, you have doctors, you have different doctors because he has a head injury, he had 2 broken legs, so you have different specialties of doctors in there at one time. And so the paramedics are just calling out medications he's given, vitals. Doctors are talking to other doctors, nurses are going, right? It's like this beautiful controlled chaos working on Christian. And I remember just standing there being like, man, like this is amazing. Like I don't even know why I thought that. I just, maybe I just need some comfort to know that hey, they're doing their job, because if it was uncontrolled chaos and I felt like they weren't doing a good job, I'd probably freaked out. But it felt like they were all doing a great job. They were working on him. They seemed to be all clicking and stuff, and it kind of brought me a little bit of comfort knowing that this controlled chaos was for my son. And so I couldn't see him at the time, but I could hear what they were calling out. Okay, he's breathing. His vitals are good. So I'm getting bits and pieces of things where I'm just like, okay, good. Like those are all good signs. And yeah, so from then it's just a waiting game. Like they're just working on him and stuff, and I'm just watching them. And I remember a nurse came out and she had a Ziploc baggie and had 2 bracelets. One of them was this white one, and there was another one that his mom wears, and she gave them to me. And so those were the bracelets that he was wearing the day of the accident, and so that's why I wear this white one, and it never comes off. But yeah, that and they worked on him until I don't even remember how long. But then Brittany, his mom, and Letty, my wife, they start showing up, and they're running tests on Christian because they got to take him to get his brain scanned, and they got to get X-rays, and they got to see the extent of the damage and stuff. So there's points and times where we're in there, and then I get escorted out to wait because they're taking them for imagery and stuff like that. And then people are starting to show up, my sister and my mom and stuff like that. So briefing them and stuff, and again, then back to mission oriented, right? I got to brief them. I got to stay strong. I'm not breaking down. I'm not crying because if I break down, they're gonna break down. And so we just needed to stay focused because we didn't know, but Christian needed us to be strong. And so that's kind of where my head was at. Like stay strong for him, stay strong for the family, and let's just hope for the best.
Yeah. How long did the hospital, like you guys were there waiting more or less for how long?
So the accident happened at 6 p.m. He probably got to the hospital, flown in about 8:45, 9 p.m. And I want to say the trauma center to when he got to the ICU level was probably around 1, 2 in the morning. So we were kind of in limbo during that time, and we were getting updates back and forth. And I remember the first doctor, she didn't sugarcoat it. And I think I told her, like, don't sugarcoat it. Just tell us the truth. And she said, Christian suffered, the 2 broken legs, some face fractures, and the skull. But the skull, the brain injury was the most severe. And so she just told us, like, it's a bad injury. It's bad. We don't know if he's going to, what the outcome is going to be. And even if he does survive, we don't know the extent of damage because the injury was so bad. So, I mean, from the get-go, like, we knew that the injury was bad. And so we were preparing for, at that point, we didn't think he was going to pass because the doctor said, his vitals are fine. Everything was looking good. So we're just relieved. Okay, he's going to live. Whatever else comes like after that, we're like, we'll take it. But we know our son's alive. And so that's kind of where our mind was at during that little 4 or 5 hour block until he went up to the ICU. And then that's when we spent the 5 days in ICU.
And those 5 days in the ICU, was it consistent information? Was there like change in trajectory, or was it, what was, if you don't mind me asking, like what was like the, you get what I'm getting at? Like, were you at the same level of peace and just waiting, or was it like up and down roller coaster? Like,
I think at that point we were just in shock. Seeing your son like that, full of blood. And at this point, now we've seen him. They kind of cleaned him off. We're able to see him and talk to him. Me and Brittany, his mom, had to go talk to the neurologist, and and he kind of explained to us some things, and we had to make some decisions. And so we were able to see him and hold him and talk to him. That was before we went upstairs to ICU. So when we went upstairs to ICU, the first 2 days, we didn't think he was going to pass. So for me, my mind was, it's bad. I don't care what the outcome is. We're going to be here. So we were already gearing up. So the first initial GoFundMe was because we were gearing up for a long stay in the hospital. And me and Brittany, his mom, had already decided, like, we don't care how long this is going to take. Like, we're going to stay in here with them. And so that means I'm not going to work. I'm not going to do anything. I'll be in here until he gets out. And so the first 2 days, we had hope. And when it comes to brain injuries and this is where we kind of had the false hope. And now I know a lot more. Those 5 days, I learned a lot about the brain and just everything entire that is. The brain takes time to swell. It's kind of like a bruise, right? You roll an ankle, the first day it's not bad, but day 2 or 3 it starts getting bruised and swollen and stuff. The brain's the same way. So because of his skull fractures, he had multiple skull fractures, and that actually relieved pressure immediately. So, which was a blessing because the brain didn't have pressure. And those fractures were actually helping him. But the doctor had explained to us, like, the maximum swelling of the brain is not going to be till about the 72-hour mark. So we're not out of the woods yet. And so the brain was what we were worried about. Broken legs, they can get fixed. Face fractures can get fixed. Organs, everything was good. It was just his brain injury. That was what we were focused on. And the doctor had told us, well, because of the skull fractures, his skull is already opened up to the max that we would open up a skull. Because you know how you always hear, like, they cut a piece of the skull out to let the brain swell? Mm-hmm. Well, that would be the next step, but the skull had already fractured to that point. So I asked the doctor, well, what happens if his brain continues to swell? Well, y'all take a piece of skull out. And so what I learned is that you would think, right, just cut the whole skull off and let the brain just swell, right? It doesn't work that way. They can only open the brain up so much because the brain will start pushing out in those openings and cause more damage. So that's why they have a maximum amount that they can open. And the doctor just told us, we'll just see when we get there. Let's just hope for the best. And so that first 2 days was just a waiting game for the skull. The nurses, so because of Christian's brain injury, he couldn't control his body temperature. So he would get too hot, he'd get too cold. Doctors were coming in to look at his legs for compartment syndrome. So they were like looking at that. Christian's heart rate would go down. I mean, he had a tower of medicine. He was probably on I don't even know, 10, like 15 meds. It was just a tower. And the nurses did such an amazing job, but they worked on Christian every second of their shift. If it wasn't, if it was one thing, it was another. You know, they'd push meds to help the blood pressure. This would cause this. They had to fix that. Then they had to move them, and they had to it was just crazy. And I could not believe, like, man, like me and Brittany and Letty were in the hospital, and I was just like, dude, this is crazy. Like these nurses are working 12-hour shifts, and they're constantly working on Christian. And so that first 2 days was just that. And then, you know, day 2, you start kind of getting used to it, all right? You know, you start learning things. And me and Brittany had not really slept. I mean, I don't even know when last time we ate or slept. And I finally was like, hey, I'm gonna take a nap. And Brittany and Letty were there. I took a nap, and it's probably 5 a.m. going into day 3. And I wake up to like doctors in his room and stuff, and his brain was swelling. So this was the decision of what are they going to do next? Are they going to take a piece out? Like, what's the next step? And so they told us that they were going to go and they were going to do that, take a piece out. And so we went to a waiting room that was in the ICU. But the doctor came in, and that was the first time that she had told us, like, you know, there's a possibility that Christian won't survive this surgery. And no, that's when it hit, because I was like, he's gonna survive. But when she said that, I just like, that was the first moment it really hit me that damn, like my son may not survive this. Like I may lose my son. And I mean, she continued to talk, and I had no clue what she was saying. Like my mind was just on those words. Like Christian may not survive this. And Brittany and Letty were listening to her, and when she got done, like she left the room, and I think we were like on the 10th floor. So those windows are pretty thick, the exterior ones. And I remember like just punching the window, and they thought I was gonna like break the glass. So they like pulled me back, and I just broke down. Um, that's probably the first time that I really broke down in front of them. And then the first time it really hit me that I may lose my son. And so that was the start of the downhill. Um, he had the surgery. They took the piece out, the piece of skull out, which gave room for his brain to swell. But we were still within that 72-hour window, so the swelling still wasn't done. And so now it was just a waiting game, and we waited. And anything we do, our brain swells like naturally. Even right now, any stimulus, our brain will have a little bit of swelling. And so for someone like Christian who can't afford any swelling at all, they were actually taking brain fluid and blood out of his skull to make room for his brain to swell. And so those next couple days, you know, we had very low talking, very low light, like no stimulus. And I remember family, they kept texting me, hey, can we see Christian? And I don't think the family, even my friends on Facebook, because didn't know the extent. Like no one thought that we were going to lose Christian. And so, you know, the family's like, can we see Christian? Because at first they could. And then as family started coming in and it got worse, then everyone stopped. No one could see him, but just a select few of us. And, but like they would text, hey, when can we see him? Okay, well, maybe later. But as things got worse, that later went to no, you can't see him today. And I don't think they could like understand that. And I remember asking Brittany, Christian's mom, her dad, so my ex-father-in-law, hey, can you gather up the family? So Brittany's side of the family, my side, everybody, just gather them up and just tell them that like this is serious. Like Christian may not live, and just let them know like don't be mad. if you can't see him. Because, I mean, that's kind of what we were worried about. You know, like, as bad as it sounds, like, we're like, well, you know, the grandma wants to see him. You know, I feel bad because my mom, I got to see him, but so-and-so didn't, right? But at the certain point, we're like, we didn't care anymore. Like, no. Like, this is dire. And instead of him doing it, I actually went downstairs and did it myself and just gathered them all up. And we're on day 3. I don't even think I slept. Maybe 2 hours. I haven't eaten. I'm exhausted. And I tell everybody, like, listen, Christian may die. Like, he may not survive this. There's a good possibility that he's not going to survive. And like, I could just see, like, the shock on their faces because no one thought that. No one, because they couldn't grasp, because they didn't see him. I don't think they could grasp the severity of his injuries and situation. So when I went down there and told them, like, Christian may die, I mean, it was probably a shock, like it was for me. And I could just see their faces just change like that instant. And so I was just like, listen, he can't have any visitors, nobody. Like, I appreciate y'all coming, but if y'all want to stay downstairs and wait, thank you. But right now, like, no one is in his room. And that was probably the day 3, day 4. And again, the whole time the nurses are working on him. It's constant. It's 5 days of constant working on him. These nurses, man, these nurses were a blessing. And then going into day 4, Christian's brain was continuing to swell. And at this point, there was nothing they could really do. You know, they could push meds, they could sit him up a little bit, and maybe the drainage would take pressure off his head. But at this point, it was just going to be up to his body, see if, you know, his brain would just hold off for a little bit. And so it was a waiting game. And I mean, that was horrible. Like, waiting to just see if your child's going to die or not. And he didn't look like he was swollen, you know, because he broke pretty much every bone in his face. So he's swollen. He has his head injury. He just didn't truly look like my son. And so to see your child in that condition, he's in 2 casts. He's just broken. And so to see your child in that condition is just, it's crazy. It's heartbreaking. You know, at day 4, I'm kind of used to it now. But I remember when his mom's dad, they were in Virginia and they flew in, so they didn't get to see him like right away. And I remember I went downstairs to meet them. And so these are Christian's grandparents on his mom's side. And Tom and Allison, I was like, hey, like, listen, Christian looks bad, but this is what's going on. This is the situation, but just, he looks bad. Okay, let's go see my grandson. All right. And so I escort them upstairs, and we walk into the room, and his grandfather just broke. And, you know, to see a grown man cry and break down, like, that's hard. It doesn't matter, like, who you are. Just to see a grown man, like, break down like that, just based on his look of his grandson. And so, yeah, it was a shock how bad and broken he looked, and just the way he looked. And that's when you see how fragile the body is, how fragile life is. And on day 4, his brain wouldn't stop swelling. So the only thing we could do is put him in a coma, stop his brain so he would have no more brain waves, and see if that would help. That means he had 0 like stimulation. You know, they take him off the meds because he doesn't need them anymore because he has no brain waves. So he's basically brain dead, but it's induced. And that's to stop all like stimulation to see if that would help. So we said, yes, do it. Do whatever you need, you know, to save our son. And so, you know, they shaved his head. They put a bunch of stuff on him for the EKG to monitor his brain waves. I think that's what it's called. But like whatever the one is to monitor the brain. And they put him in the coma. And so once they did that, that was pretty, you know, he passed away. after that. So during the time, I think day one, they had taken some of the meds off because the neurologist needed to see how Christian responded, because you can only tell the extent of the damage if the person's lucid. And so they kind of took some of the pain meds away and kind of pushed on Christian's like shoulder and stuff, and Christian reacted. He moved his arm, his heart rate jumped, so he felt the pain. And so for us, that was amazing. Like, he felt it. Like, he was unconscious, but he felt it. We saw him move, and so that was the only sign of life that we really had. And then fast forward to that last day when they put him in the coma, it just wasn't helping. His brain continued to swell, and now we're in the morning of day 5, and we have doctors coming in and out. And I remember going out to the hallway, and there's so much throughout that 5 days. This is like a quick,
Yeah.
it's just so much, like so much. But I remember going out to the hallway and asking the doctor, like, I need you to tell me what. So a herniation is when, from what I know, when the brain herniates, it swells to the point to where it has nowhere else to go. So it starts pushing out on openings, and part of that is the brainstem. And so when he herniates, it basically swells to the point where it breaks the brainstem. Once it breaks the brainstem, he's brain dead. And so we knew that's kind of what the next step would be if his brain didn't stop. And so I went outside, away from Brittany, away from everybody, and I was like, I need you to tell me what that looks like. Like, does it make a sound? Like, prep me, because I need to be able to stay calm for Brittany and them. And so I need you to tell me. And so he told me, he was like, it doesn't make a sound. You'll see a spike in his heart, in his blood pressure, and a spike in his heart rate. Like, it'll jump up into like the 200 plus, a huge spike, and then it'll go back to normal. And that's the pressure of building. It breaks the brainstem. It relieves that pressure, and that's why his vitals go back down. And so the morning of the 5th day, he has a monitor on his brain that shows the swelling, like the number. You want it to be below 20. I forgot what it's called, but you want it to be below 20. So the first day you're praying, stay below 20. Well, it doesn't. It goes into the 30s. So then you freak out, but then what else can you do? So now you're praying, okay, stay in the 30s, stay in the 30s, please God, just, yeah, it's bad, but he can survive like the 30s. Then he goes into the 40s, and it's just a domino effect. Now you're freaking out, but then you have to calm yourself, okay, stay in the 40s. Just don't go up any like higher. And so that morning, it started going up. It was going up into the 50s and 60s, and I forgot exactly the number where it gets like where it's coming, but it was getting there. And because I had asked the doctor what it looked like, I knew what was going on. And it started happening. He was gonna herniate. At that point, doctors were coming in, nurses were coming in, and they were doing whatever they could. There was this one doctor, tall white guy. He was phenomenal. He came in. He wasn't there the first 3 days, but day 4 and 5, like, he was there, and man, he was amazing. He broke down like Christian's injuries. He really made sure we understood. If we had a question, he would take the time to really make sure that we had what we needed, right? And you could tell he was doing whatever he could to save my son. There was another doctor, a female. Didn't really like her. She in and out. But I remember him saying, hey, do this. And telling the nurses, hey, like, do this. And that female doctor said, oh, well, that's not going to work. And he said, do it anyways, And like, it pissed me off because I'm like, hey, just do it, Like, she's like, oh, no, like, there's no point to that. Well, he's like, no, do it. So I could tell he's doing anything, unconventional stuff. At this point, do whatever, And that's what he was trying to do. And it's happening. His heart rate's starting to jump up. His pressure's starting to jump up. I know it's coming. Brittany, his mom, starting to freak out. At this point, it's just me and Brittany in the room. My wife had to go home real quick for some work stuff, and then she was going to come back, and I knew what was happening, and so I'm getting prepped for it. And I remember Brittany's freaking out. I'm trying to console her. She's sitting on the couch. I'm standing by her side, and just trying to console her the best I can. And I remember her asking the doctor that gentleman, is my son gonna die? And I remember he had these big blue eyes, and he has the face mask on, and he looks at her. It seemed like forever, but it was probably a couple seconds. These big blue eyes just staring at her, and he just says, "Yes." And I mean, what do you do? You know? And so, Brittany, I don't know what happened at that moment. I didn't freak out. I didn't go crazy. Brittany's crying. She's struggling, I think. But because I had asked the doctor, so I knew, and that's what I needed. And again, I don't know how I can stay calm in certain moments, but Christian herniates, pressure spikes, drops back down. He's brain dead. Because he was in the induced coma. He's on life support already because he was in the coma, so he's alive. His physical body is still alive because of the machines, but he's gone. And so that was, I don't even know, 10, 11 o'clock in the morning on day 5. And so at that point, we had already asked the nurses when that stuff was going on, hey, because there's only allowed a limit of people. There was only allowed 5 people upstairs on the 10th floor, only 2 in the room. But when Christian was going to pass, we knew that they were going to allow everyone up to say the goodbyes. Well, my wife's not there. Brittany, she's married. Her husband's not there. I need someone up there to console her. So I'm like, hey, go get her parents. And I'm texting, hey, bring Mr. and Mrs. Jones up here now. Get them up here. And so nurses are getting up there. So her parents came up. I want to say someone came up for me because I was like, I need someone here for Brittany because she's gonna lose it. And so yeah, so they were already up there, and he herniated, and so he was gone. I don't know, man. I was calm. I called people. I let them know. There were some crying bits when I was letting friends know, hey, Christian's gonna pass. I cried, but I called the funeral home during that time, and told them, hey, my son's gonna pass. This is where he's at. This is his name. We're gonna use y'all. How do you do that? But I just felt like I that was my job. It was my job to do it. And so all the family came up, friends that were there, say their goodbyes. So now everyone can see him. So there were people that hadn't seen him. Now everyone's up there and they're saying their goodbyes. And I mean, he's just sitting there. He's just laying there, lifeless, and everyone's saying their goodbyes. And at that point, I don't know. I don't know what to think. I don't think it's hit me. I'm still in shock. I'm in shock of the entire situation. I'm in shock of that moment. My son's going to die. Like what else? There's nothing I could do. And I remember thinking, man, I can't fight my way out of this. I can't shoot my way out of it. All this training I do, all this, to make sure that I'm the one that can handle anything, but I can't save my son. And that was kind of hard, through that 5 days, letting the nurses and stuff, because, there were things I looked at, why y'all doing this? But I had to tell myself, you're not a doctor, you're not a nurse. You can't do anything for him. These are the people that can help you. And that's hard to do. It's hard to rely on somebody else. And yeah, I remember thinking like, man, I can't, all this training, all this stuff I've been through and everything, and none of it is going to save my son. And I had to just relinquish that to people I didn't even know, but, doctors and nurses, like that's their job. And so, yeah, I was able to really take a step back and just let them do their work for that 5 days. Once everybody said their goodbyes to Christian, they all went back downstairs, and now it's like our turn. And me, Brittany, Letty, and Ryan. Brittany's a husband. We were up there. Grandparents kind of stayed for their last goodbyes, the closest. But then it was just us four, and then it was just me and Brittany, his mom. I asked my wife, me and Brittany just need some time with Christian, and they had moved Christian over, and the nurses allowed Brittany to lay in the bed with Christian. So Brittany lays in bed with Christian, and oh man, there was a story. So before that, me, Letty, Ryan, and Brittany are in the room, and we're talking, and we're kind of just telling, we already kind of said our goodbyes. Christian's laying right there, and we're just talking, and we're just telling stories. And I remember during that conversation, and it wasn't like a big moment, but I remember Brittany saying Christian's already in heaven. This is just his body. Brittany's very religious. Her family's very religious. I'm religious, but I wasn't really religious at that time. Throughout that hospital stay, and that's a whole nother thing. I was feeling, closer to God, and it had a lot to do with, her family, her mom and dad. The pastor that dedicated I'm Christian had come from Del Rio, and I was just feeling closer to God during those 5 days. So during those 5 days to now, that's brought me back to my faith. And so I remember Brittany saying that just during our conversation with us four, Christian's been gone. This is just his body, but he's in heaven. And, we continue to talk. And the nurses are just kind of waiting for us to say, hey, it's time. It's time to turn the machines off, pull the plug. But how do you do that? How do you say, okay, hey, it's time for my son to die? And I don't know what happened, but we said something, and Letty looked at her phone, and it was I think it was 5/18, which is Christian's birthday. It was something like that, to where it was a sign. At that moment, Letty looks at her phone, and it was 5/18, and so we took that as a sign, because why would she look at her phone at that moment, right? And so, and I had just asked, I don't know how to how to say okay, let's do it, and that happened, and so that's just a weird moment, and but it was a sign that we took it, and so we asked Letty and Ryan, hey, can we have a moment with Christian, just me and his mom, and we lay there with Christian, and I'm standing next to him, and Brittany's laying in bed with him now, and we're just holding him and talking to him. Just telling him how proud we were of him, how much we loved him. And that we were sorry that we weren't there. I was sorry that I couldn't save him. Just like, what do you tell your child, that you're about to lose? A part of me like wanted him to wake up so I could physically tell him I love him. So I knew 100% he heard me, but a part of me was happy that he wasn't conscious to know what was going to happen. So the selfish part of me wanted him awake, but I think I'm glad that he wasn't awake for it, so he didn't have to go through that. But I asked Brittany, I said, what'd you say like earlier about Christian's body? And she said, Christian's body, like Christian's not here. He's been in heaven. This is just his body. And so I asked her, I was like, just tell me again, like say it again. And so she kept saying it. And as she said it, it kind of brought me peace at that moment, knowing that my son was in heaven. And so I just asked her, hey, like, tell me again, tell me again, tell me again. And the more she said it, not easier it got, but the more that the peace of knowing he was in heaven was coming down on me. And so I said, it's time. And we promised each other that we wouldn't cry, that we'd be strong for Christian. And so I told Letty, hey, tell the nurse that it's time. And so she did. And I can't remember if Letty and Ryan came back into the room or not, but we're still holding him, and the nurses are kind of just working around us, and they're starting to get prepped to turn the machines off. And when they're about to turn the machine off, I just tell Brittany, like, keep telling me. And he's not. I mean, he's in heaven. This is just his body. He's in heaven. Like, this is just his body. Just tell me. Keep telling me. So she just kept saying it. They turn the machines off. She's telling me. And he takes his last breath, and he's gone. And so we just lost our son. 14 years, every day. They're your kids, so you worry about them every day for 14 years, and it's over. He's gone, no more. How do you? I know. It's just it's at that moment. I don't even think I could register it. And it hurt, but I still think I'm in shock. It's been 6 months. I still don't think it's fully hit me. And so, we lay with him for about an hour, me and Brittany. And again, my experience being a cop and being around dead bodies, I know what happens with rigor mortis and how the body reacts and starts to feel. And so I feel Christian getting cold and stuff like that. And so I told Brittany, I was like, we need to go. Like, I don't want Brittany to see. At this time, I covered his body with the blanket that he had, and I didn't want Brittany to experience the stages of death. But an hour starts to set in. Rigor mortis, he's getting stiff. And I just didn't want her to experience that. And so we said our goodbyes and left the room. Packed our bags and left the hospital. It's been 5 days. Traumatic 5 days, like all the mental and physical stress of that for 5 days. Just the roller coaster, the up and downs, just, man, it was a toll. Your son dies, you pack your bags and go home. That's it. Like, it's crazy. Yeah. It's like, we were planning on sleeping there, being there for months through his recovery. and you walk out of the room with your bags, and your son's just laying there dead, and then you gotta just get in your car and go home and go to bed, wait and like wake up the next day. It's crazy.
I can't even begin to fathom any of that, right? Like, I remember the original stories and posts when it was early. And then I remember the shift. And I remember thinking, like, man, you have lots of different things that come to mind and lots of different obviously I've never experienced losing a child. I've experienced grief. But every person and their grief and their experience, isn't necessarily relatable in all the ways, right? And I just remember thinking and praying, like, God be with them. I can't say shit. Well, you know what I mean? Like, if you've been there, people want to show up and show love and say the right things, and it's like, I love you, but
Yeah.
sorry, and that's where my head went, was like, just God be with them, because there's nothing anybody can do or say,
No.
right? That you can't, that they're not changing that.
Yeah.
And I remember that, and I think, like, I remember even thinking, like, I don't even know how to, like, you want to reach out. I'm sure people, they want to say the right thing or do the right thing, and it's like, man, I think the first thing that I said was just like, praying for y'all, got love for y'all. That was it. It doesn't need to, like,
Yeah.
and that's probably not even going to register, right?
No, I mean,
know
that's
what I mean?
probably the best thing.
Right.
One of the best things that someone can say.
Right.
Yeah. Because you hear, I'm sorry for your loss. Christian's in a better place. Like, no, he's not.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, we know he is. He's in heaven. He's where we all want to end up. And it's going to be a blessing when we all get there, But, I want him physically here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that comment means well. He's in a better place, because he is, but it just doesn't, if that's the case, okay, well, how about your kids go to heaven right now?
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't want that, even though it's a better place, right?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but you can't get mad.
Right.
Because everyone means well. And you would ask me what I would say to someone who lost a child like before that. I have no clue. I'd probably say the same thing. Like, I have no clue.
Yeah. No, I think, God forbid anybody go through anything remotely close to that, or any type of, like, shocking event of anywhere near that magnitude. All I could think about was, like, I remember what I did and didn't want to hear or see or experience, because, for me, I can speak for myself. I was like, if I'm normally here, when you haven't slept, you haven't ate, you haven't done anything, like, you're here, you just don't know it, but you're here. Like, you feel, you're kind of like but you can go here real quick.
Yeah.
Like, it's like a short span, if that makes sense. And I was just like, man, I had family, like, in my situation, family come, I hadn't talked to them in years, man. Now all of a sudden, you give a shit, you know what I mean? A lot of that. And 100%. I was just remember being like, I can't even look at this shit.
Yeah.
Selfish, whatever. Like, I don't know. But I just remember that being the case. And I just remember being like, praying for you, love y'all. Like, and I just had just this thought of, like, people will also try to insert themselves in those situations in different ways.
Yeah.
And like you said, most of the time they mean well. I don't think anyone does it out of malintent.
No.
But I remember just thinking in that moment, though, like, I think him and I crossed paths for a reason. I don't know. But if it's going to transpire into something, like, God will take care of that. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Organically. And I remember, I definitely don't want to speed through any of the process. If there's anything else around that you want to talk about, I want to give you the floor for that 100%.
Man, like, what's crazy is like, I mean, I think I'll say one thing. So my wife, Letty, she was hurting. We got together about 10 years ago. So when Christian was about 4 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So she's been with Christian and been Christian's stepmom for 9 years. So she was hurting. But she took a lot, because we still have our daughter that needed us. So she took a lot of that burden off me to be with our daughter and make sure things that needed to be done were done. That was a blessing. But I think we were more worried about like our parents, like the grandparents, like me and Brittany, asking our parents, like, how you doing? We're worried about them more than, they should be asking us, right? But we were asking them. And so I don't know why we do that, but maybe just, we just want to make sure that everyone's okay, because we just lost our son, but they just lost their grandson. They just lost their nephew, their brother. And so, we wanted to make sure that they were okay as well. And so I remember kind of worrying about that. Like, how is everyone else doing? And I don't know why, why we do that or why we did that. But it just, I don't know if it was just a way that our body was just trying to deflect the pain of what we just experienced or just trying to, like in survival mode. But I remember doing that. But yeah, you drive home that night. You just drive home and like go to bed. Like your whole life has changed and your life moves on. And I think that's the first time in my life that I truly felt that, like how fragile life is, how things can change in a moment, and just how like just not cruel, but just how crazy this life of ours is. Like tomorrow we're gonna wake up and it'll be another day, you know, and I think that's what we did. I don't remember exactly what I did, where I slept that night, but our daughter was at my in-laws' house. We didn't let her see Christian in the hospital just because of his injuries, and they were really close. She's 5, but they were close. She loved her Bubba, and we had just taken a fishing trip, probably 2 weeks prior to that, just me, her, and Christian. And we stayed in a hotel room. We went to Dairy Queen. It was just like a father and children like weekend, and we had just done that 2 weeks prior to the accident. And Christian was showing her like how to fish, and she was like loving it. And I just let him do it. I didn't try to take over. I just, that was kind of Christian's thing. His like newfound love was fishing, and I knew he was excited to show me and show her because he was catching all these bass and catfish and stuff. And so I just would sit back and just let him show her and stuff, and she was loving it. And so that was the last weekend we spent together. But we had to wake up the next morning and like tell her that, hey, your brother's gone to heaven. And so that was harder for us than it was for her at that moment. I remember I was dreading like telling her. We had just lost a family member, I think a month prior to cancer, or 2 months prior, and then we lost a close family friend to cancer. And so we kind of explained to Mia what heaven was because she was close to my wife's cousin. And so we had to explain to her, he went to heaven, he passed away. And so we had just explained to her death. And so we knew that she knew what death was. But man, the drive from our house to my in-laws in preparation to tell her. It was just dreadful. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but again, I was going to do it, her father. And so we took her outside, and I just got on her knee, and I said, she knew Christian was in the hospital. She knew he was hurt. She just didn't know the extent. And I said, remember, Jesse went to heaven? Yeah, okay. Well, Bubba went to heaven. And she was just like, okay, Dad. And just ran off and wanted to play. And I'm like bawling. She just didn't grasp it. She didn't understand it. And, like that hurts because I know it's going to hurt her. And she just doesn't know how, she's not going to know how to express herself or, just express herself. But, that was just another hit to the gut to have to tell your daughter, hey, your brother is gone. You'll never see him again, He'll never be there for you. And, yeah, so that was a tough next morning. And then that goes into the funeral. Right? Yeah. Had to plan your son's funeral. Never in a million years I think I'd be planning my son's funeral. And so that was a lessons learned. How to do all that, I've never had to pay for a funeral. My grandparents had passed, but they had it prepaid and stuff. And so we kind of just do the arrangements. And then, of course, knowing a little bit about funeral homes and stuff, like I kind of had an idea, but the logistics it goes into a funeral and the decisions you have to make immediately was just crazy. And I had told my sister and my mom and some others, I was like, listen, I want to plan the funeral. Brittany, his mom, couldn't. Me and her were taking it two different ways. She was in the house and couldn't leave the house. She was just broken, where I couldn't stay in the house. I had to get out. I had to keep my mind like occupied because I would go crazy. And so I was like, you know what? I'm planning the funeral. And I gave him a heads up. I don't want opinions. I don't need your opinions. If I ask you, then like run with it, but just don't. And they all knew that. They all respected it. And I wanted them to be involved. So I gave them, hey, can you help me with the music? Can you help me with the pictures? Brittany's sister, hey, can you get the pictures on your side of the family? So they could be involved. But what he was wearing, his casket, everything was going to be Brittany and like Brittany's just like I would get the information, Brittany would approve it or not approve it, and that's how it was going to be. And I just felt like that was the last thing I could do for him. You spend his whole life as the parent doing for your children, and this was going to be the last thing that I had control of to do for him, and I was going to do it. And of course, like people offer because you would think, okay, he's going to be too broken to do it, so we'll step up and we'll do it for him. But I was like, no, like I want to do it. And so for 2 weeks, every day was just getting after it, planning the funeral, getting the casket made, headstone. Where are you going to bury him? I didn't know where we were going to bury Christian. Is he going to go to Fort Sam? Or is he going to go, like we had no clue. So we had decisions to make, things that I never even thought about. So we had to figure that out and stuff. And so daytime during those first 2 weeks, it really helped like planning the funeral. But nighttime it was horrible. Nighttime I would go to the funeral home like every night and just sit there. Because my son was in the funeral home. And I feel like I was just leaving him behind. And the funeral home that we chose was in Schertz where I live, where in my community, that's where we all go to, is Schertz Funeral Home. And I drive past that every day. And even before the funeral, I would drive past it every day. I would drive past and I would be like, my son is in there right now in a freezer or dead. And I would have to drive past it. So at nighttime, I would go there and just sit there all night, sleep there. And I told friends, like, hey, if you want to talk to me, if you want to come and see me, I'll be at the funeral home. You can come like see me there. And they did. Some of them did. They come, brought chairs, and we just sit there and talk. But that's what I told them. I was like, I'll be there. So if you truly want to be there and talk to me, I'll see y'all there. So yeah, it was just 2 weeks of craziness, and on top of what we had just gone through. And then to think back, like, man, 2 weeks prior to that, I was fishing with my son and daughter, you know, talking about me and Brittany had just made plans for Thanksgiving, you know, Christmas, and then your son's gone. It's just surreal.
One of the things that I, again, watching from a distance, right? Because, well, like, I didn't feel like we were that close, right, at that time. Just because, like, we met at a concert.
Yeah.
We rolled.
A month later, the accident occurred.
Right. So I didn't feel like I was even remotely close to being in a place to being, like, you know, anything other than, like, praying for all of y'all, whatever. But I paid attention, right? And not for any crazy reason, but just like when you pray about something, you wonder how God is going to work, right? Or you wonder if God's going to work. I'll be honest, my faith hasn't been a perfect story.
Yeah.
There's been times in my faith where the why question happens a lot. The why not question happens a lot. All those things.
I think everybody goes through that.
Right. I had this old timer tell me one time. It was something to that effect. That was like, you know, to truly walk in faith means you're going to stumble.
100%.
If you don't stumble, you ain't walking, right?
Yeah.
And I always carried that. But I remember being like, man, I wonder what God's going to do, right? Like, and I remember paying attention. You were on the social media stuff, you know what I mean? You know, spreading awareness, talking about, you know, what had happened, you know, posting a lot of stuff to honor Christian, you know, and I just remember seeing it over and over and over again. And I knew when I was seeing that, I was like, he's going to do something with this. I don't know what. He probably doesn't know what, but he's going to do. It felt like for me, it was like I could relate to that part.
Yeah.
Of like this thing, he's got to do something with this, you know. And I can relate to that. Obviously, different scenarios, different, no comparison. But I know what that capacity feels like. It's like I got to do something with this, and I just remember watching from afar and seeing, like, you know, this process kind of unfold, and it wasn't very long after this time frame we're talking about where, you know, I think the 60K was first. Was that the first thing that you were like, I'm going to go do this thing?
The 100K.
100K.
Yeah.
Bandera.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember seeing that and thinking, like, I might know where this is headed, right? You know, for those that don't know any of my story, any time in my life I've had any sort of anything like that, I turned to the endurance world. There's nothing that I've experienced outside of death, right? That will completely remove all ego, all anything external, and strip you to nothing that's worldly, right? Other than endurance, ultra endurance events. Jiu-Jitsu exposes you in different ways, right? These things expose you in different ways. But the endurance stuff is kind of like, it takes everything from you, and then you just see what's left. And it's kind of raw in that way. And I didn't get in, so I did the Ironman, but that wasn't out of suffering, that wasn't out of grief, right? That was out of me proving a point and showing people you can do anything from anywhere. The 100-miler stuff, that was rooted in my dad.
Yeah.
I needed to, and I still haven't figured it out for what it's worth. but I felt like there was something I needed to find or figure. And hell, I didn't sleep very good, but if there was something that did help me more or less pass out, was just abusing my body to a point where it was like, I got nothing left. And then maybe I'd sleep for a little bit, right? Kind of thing. That was for me. But I saw you go, and I saw you're going to do the 100K, and I knew as soon as you said you're going to do it, I was like, there wasn't a question in my mind whether or not you're going to finish.
Yeah.
I knew you weren't trained for it at the time, right? You were still a little heavy, because we talked about that. I remember us kind of going back and forth a little bit on that, and you're like, I've got a little weight to lose, and this is my volume, and it would have been silly of me to be like, don't do that to yourself. You're not ready. I knew why. You know what I mean? You needed to go do it.
Yeah.
And so there's never a question on whether or not you were going to make that happen. And then I wondered after that, though, I was like, I wonder what he's going to do with this. And at this point, Christian Strong had already been, that's kind of like what you were outwardly saying. And so to me, what that meant, and the reason I could relate to it was like, he's using this to honor Christian, right?
Yeah.
And I can relate to that. And I loved that. And I kind of was just like, man, when I've seen very few people in that actual state of mind, that's why they're doing something. The amount of people that you can impact and touch, though, is endless. Because it's for a different reason. It's not for yourself.
Yeah.
Right?
So what's crazy about that, my entire life I've been an athlete. You play college or football, play college baseball. I played football growing up too, joined the military. I was always physically fit, always pushing my body, and that was just what I could do. Some people can play an instrument, some can draw. I was athletic, and I could do physical stuff. When I got out of the military, even though I did jiu-jitsu and I had done tournaments and stuff, I enjoyed that. So that wasn't mentally taxing. It was physically, but it wasn't mentally because I enjoyed it. I was doing things that I enjoy. And my buddy, my old platoon leader, Metcalf, he was out in Virginia. He had asked me back in, I think, July. He said, hey, I'm doing 100K. Will you come and coach me during my race? I need a crew. And it was in Virginia. And I said, yeah, I don't know anything about it. Like, at that time, I knew nothing about, like, ultras. I had never even ran. I think the farthest I ever ran at one time was like 20 miles. I've completed half marathons, but never full marathons. So, and, I'm 5'10", 235, 240. I'm not doing ultras, right? And I remember saying, like, man, like, I want to do that, I think that'd be good. I needed something. I felt like I had gotten mentally soft since being out of the military. Like, I hadn't done anything hard to really push me mentally. And that's kind of been what I felt like helped me succeed throughout life. Is I knew, I always say, like, you can push yourself, when someone's like, oh, well, he works sitting at a desk for 20 hours. I feel like you can push yourself to do that, but you can't lie jumping on a treadmill. You can't lie when you're doing something physically, And so I wanted to get back to that. So I went to Virginia in September of last year, and I watched him do this race. Now, if we pause there, my Lieutenant Metcalf, he got out as a major. Any military course, Ranger School, Special Forces, combat diver, anything he's ever done in the military, he has succeeded. He's one of the hardest people I know personally, that he can just do whatever, So he finished this race, and at the end of it, he was like in tears. And if you know this guy is not a crying guy. He is a hard man. He's an acquired taste, but he's definitely not a crier. And he's definitely not someone that shows emotions. And someone that I've respected, we went to his wedding years back. He was my boss, my platoon leader, but when I was in Afghanistan in 2011. But as the senior squad leader, me and him were doing missions together. So we're always together. And we'd been through firefights. We'd been through IEDs. we'd been through a bunch of stuff together in combat, and we just always kind of stayed in touch and gravitated towards each other. So, and you gotta think guys that know like Ranger School really hard, combat diver, the SF course down in Florida, like that's a really hard course. I've never been through that, but it's a really hard course, and so he's passed these courses, and so in my mind, it's like, dude, like this guy is like so mentally strong, physically strong. Like, I look up to him. And he finished this race, and the race was brutal. Very elevation was crazy. It was one of the harder like races in North America. And he had qualified for another qualifying race, Western States, or he qualified for the lottery. But after that race, he came in. I think he finished it in like 18 hours, said like 17 hours. But he sat down on the table or chair, and he was like tearing up. And he was just like, damn, that was hard. That was fucking hard. And for me to see that, I was like, holy shit. Like, that must have been brutal. If he's like this, that must have been brutal. So I was like, I want to do that. And so I flew home, got on like Google, 100Ks, whatever, saw Bandera in January. And so this is September of 25. And I said, hey, bro, do you want to fly down and do the Bandera? Like, I'm with me. I want to do this race. I need something mentally hard, physically hard. I don't enjoy running, and I need something to really push me. And what I just saw you do, I want to do it. So that's how that race came about. So I was already signed up for it. And so I had started training, September a little bit, October a little bit, and so we had already rented like cabins and Bandera and stuff. So it was set, planned out. The accident occurred. Christian passed, and a week before the race in January, my buddy calls me, and he's like, "Hey man, I don't know what your plans are. Um, do we need to find another room for the race? Because we're still going to come down. I'm not sure if you're doing it or not, or whatever." And that was the first time. That was the first time I had thought about it, and I was like, "No, I'm gonna do it." And he's like, "For real?" I go, "Yeah." So I hadn't trained. I hadn't really done anything, and so it was probably 2 weeks prior. Because then I jumped on the treadmill for those like 2 weeks to try to just do whatever I could do in 2 weeks, which like wasn't much. So he flew down. We go out there, and in my mind, I was like, if I can do 40 miles, I'll be happy. That'd be a win for me. Because again, like I just, I don't know. Maybe I didn't have belief in myself at that time. So I was like, you know what? I didn't train for that. I give myself excuses, right? If I do like 40 miles, I'll be happy. I just want to at least do more than half. And the morning came, had my Christian Strong shirt on, and I had my hoodie, and I told Christian, hey, um, I'm going to finish this race for you. At that moment, like, I was going to finish it. Like, there was no doubting it. I would crawl across that finish line.
Can I ask you a question?
What's that?
The thought, because it crossed my mind when I was going through an experience similar. I remember thinking, worst case, I die and I know where I'm going and I know who I'll be with.
Yeah.
Did that thought ever cross your mind at all? Of like, I'm either going to finish or that's going to happen. If that happens, that's okay.
That's a weird question. I go to a grief group on Tuesday nights, and it's for parents that lost children. And you hear this often. It's not that people want to die. They're just not afraid of it anymore because they're going to go to heaven and be with their child, right? And so I can resonate with that. Like, if I didn't have Mia, my daughter, I'd be 100% okay. Hey, take me now. I'm good. I'm going to go be with my son. I have no fear of that. Because I have Mia, I don't want to leave her. And so it's like a double-edged sword, or it's pulling me in both directions. not that I want to die, but if it happened, it'd be okay. You know, I'll be with my son, but I want to be here for her. But so why I say that is, yes, it's when I do stuff like that, like I'm not afraid.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I go cycle on the public road, you know, everyone's scared to get hit by a car. You know, it's kind of the worry when you're cycling. I have no worry of getting hit by a car. Now, am I being like dangerous about it? No, I got my light. I'm wearing reflective stuff. I'm doing whatever I can not to get hit by a car. But I'm not scared to get hit by a car like most people are. Doesn't worry me at all.
I get
You know?
that completely, man.
And so I don't know. That's not like you wanting to die.
Yeah.
You just don't have a fear of death. And even before that, you know, in the military, you know, we had talked about this before the podcast, but people have asked me, like, you know, like, why are soldiers, like, why are they crazy? You know, like, why do they come home and have problems? And when you had said the 70% for the fentanyl, and then you related it to driving a car, and you said, would you drive home knowing that 70% chance that you'll get in a crash and die? They would say no, right? Well, then when you told me that earlier, that's the same thing I tell them when I kind of explain this story. I was like, you know, we deploy. I was Army, so we deploy for a year. I was infantry, so we're outside the wire for most of our deployment. And it's not a, is there enemy out there? No, there's enemy out there. It's not a, if you're going to get hit, it's when you're going to get hit. You're going to get IED'd. You're going to get conflict. You know, they're going to attack you. There's no doubt. If you are so scared about that, you'll go crazy. And like I've seen it. I've seen soldiers who just had a baby, right? And for some reason, all he wants to do is get home. Like he's definitely afraid of going outside the wire because he doesn't want to die. He wants to go home and be a dad and be with his kid. And he completely shut down. One of the best soldiers I ever knew. Hard man, and just completely shut down because of that fear. So if you allow yourself to feel that way and be scared of death, you'll go crazy on deployments. So you spend, you know, a year-long deployment, several deployments, day after day, going out there. It's like your fear just turns off. Like your emotional state, like you accept death. And I remember my first deployment to Iraq. I was a driver, and I had that sergeant that I said that I looked up to. The gunner was another sergeant, and we had this tight little crew, little truck crew that we would drive out with. And there was this road called Route Pinto, always IED'd. So, you know, you're going to get hit on this road. And I remember we'd go to the ECP, the little checkpoint, to turn on to Pinto, and I'd be like, well, if I get hit, at least I'm with some cool dudes, you know? Like, it didn't scare you anymore. You just accepted it. Like, if I die, at least I'm with the cool guys. And I truly believe that, like, you know, that's turning off your emotional, like, internal emotional, like, switch because you have to survive combat. So then going back to now, like, I feel like I was already kind of geared towards that because of the military. And I think it just correlated with now and what I'm doing. And so, yeah, I don't fear death. And
I know I did for a long time. My transition came the night I got sober because the conversation in the mirror was like, it's not going to be drugs, alcohol, or suicide, but I'm going to max everything else out. You take me when you're ready. I made peace with it that night.
yeah,
And I really believe, you know, my lack of fear of death is faith related.
100%.
For me, it's like if God takes me, he's done with he's my mission's complete. Right? I got to a point where for me that's what I believe. It's like if I've done what he's asked me to do. Right? And so, you know, when I do the races or whatever I'm into, different things, people are always like, you're always doing something that's not safe or, you know, whatever. And I'm kind of, and my response to that is like, I'm going to be curious if I don't do it.
Yeah.
Right. And I wasted so much of my life. I don't want to say waste, but that's what it was. Not doing anything.
Being afraid.
Yeah, just being scared.
Yeah.
And comfortable in that fear, if you will. I remember leading up to both of my 100 milers, some pretty, shitty things went down in my personal life, and not sleeping, not eating leading up to them. Could have pulled out. Same reason you had every reason not to do that race, right? You have every reason to be like, nah, I'm not. And I remember just being like, fuck it, I'm doing it anyway. And I remember the last lap, so the loops were 20 miles on the last 100 miler. I came in at 80 miles. And I've been spending some time in schools talking to the kids, you know what I mean? And they got me on Instagram. And I always tell these kids though, like, anything's possible. You just got to be willing to go there. You got to be willing to go there. And I remember I came in at 80. I was broken already. There was nothing left.
Yeah.
And I had a cutoff I had to make, and my heart rate was jacked up. I wasn't getting wind. Couldn't eat, couldn't swallow anything, nothing. The whole gamut. And everybody's like, "What can we do? What can we do?" And I was like, "I'll be right back, man." I stumbled to the bathroom and looked in the mirror, and I was like, "Man, your options are simple right now. You either go out there and you finish this race, and then you can tell those kids like, hey, look, see? Or you go out there and you die, and then the kids are like, well, at least he went for it."
Yeah.
But option 3 is not on the table where you walk away from this. So it's option 1 or 2. And I went back to the tent, and I had my buddy, and I told him, my crew lead, and I was like, I need you to come up with a concoction that's going to light me on fire. And if my heart blows, it blows. And I think I had my liter pack on the back, 1.5 liters, and then I had my 2 bottles. I think it was like, at this point, I don't know how much caffeine I'd already had, but it was like 5 Red Bulls and Tailwind mixed in all these things.
Yeah.
That's all I had. And I hit that stuff, man, and my heart rate, it was cruising at 200s. I was walking.
Yeah.
Yeah, that tells you anything. I was like, not good. But I was ready, and I think it was just like, you finish and you get through that, but the emotion for me never hit until, like, it would come in waves throughout the journey. Like I'd get to a point in the race and something would come up with my dad, right, or whatever, and I'd have like a low but a high. I don't really know how to explain that. Like this low of like feeling devastated and sad, but a high of like I have a reason to keep going.
Yeah.
And then you finish, and man, for me, I was going to ask you this question, where you're at with this, but like I'd finish the race and think that was going to do it or get me to a better place or a different place.
Yeah.
And I'd cross the finish line on both of those, and I'm like drive back home. The second time I got dropped off at the hospital, but I just remember sitting there and going back home, and I think I ate pizza that night and went to bed and woke up the next day, and it's like, what now?
Yeah.
World keeps turning, right?
So I didn't train for that race, right? I was not prepared. And I'm older now. I'm 40 years old, 20 years ago, it had been a breeze. I wasn't physically tired. But, man, my ankles and my knees swelled, both of them. So my right knee started to hurt. All right, cool, whatever. Then my left knee started to hurt. Then my ankle started to hurt. And it was things that I could not, like, control.
Mm.
I can control like cramping, right? Hey, fluids, but I could not control the swelling to my knees, to my ankles. And so once it got dark, I told Letty, because she was crewing me, so she would go to all the stations, right? Have food ready for me and stuff. My buddy had done, he had stopped at the halfway point because his wife was going to do, I think, the 25K the next day, and he wanted to crew her and help her. So he wanted to get some sleep with her. Or get some rest and stuff for that. So I was going into nighttime like by myself.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little upset at my friend because we signed up for the 100K together. I needed him, or at least I felt like I needed him. I was like, damn, bro, like I need you right now, like, because what if I quit or I want to quit? You'll keep me going because I know you won't quit, right? So you asked my wife, like I was kind of upset with him. And he was like, you got it. And so I went into nighttime, like, by myself. Well, I didn't want Letty to be out there by herself going to these stations and stuff because you have to park and walk in and stuff. So I was like, you know what? Go back to the room. I should be done around this time. Just come back so you can see me cross the finish line. And so I had to take all the stuff now. I had to like pack up my I had to carry the stuff now because I wasn't gonna have her to meet me at the aid stations, and it was cold because it's January and it's freezing. So I'm putting on all my cold weather stuff, and I'm about to do this whole thing at nighttime, pitch black. My knees feel like they're gonna explode. They feel like basketballs. My ankles are killing me. I'm barely walking it at this point. And I made a mistake and I didn't take off my tights when I put on my pants, and then I started chafing. I didn't chafe for like the first 40 miles. I was good. The last 20 miles when I put my cold weather stuff on, that's when I started chafing, and it was miserable. And I couldn't change because I could barely walk.
Right.
And luckily, when we drove to Bandera, I stopped and get the running sticks. I didn't think I needed them.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't, because I don't know anything about like ultras, but I see people like with running sticks. Cause I started like that's where I found like Nick Bear.
Yeah.
Because I'm YouTubing, and then I find him, and then I watch all his stuff, and so that's kind of where I got my education on things I needed to do, stuff like that. And and then the videos I saw like walking sticks. So I was like, I need walking sticks, and thank God I had them because without those, because like Bandera is like hilly. So I'm going down hills with loose rocks and stuff, and I could barely walk. Like, if I was to stumble or trip, I would just fall. Mm-hmm. And I remember, like, there were times at night, there was a drop off, and I'm like, dude, if I just fall off right now, it'll be done. And I don't have to tell everybody I quit, but I fell. And then I remember this guy, I didn't know, but he was in front. He goes, yeah, but dude, it'll take forever for them to come get you. And it's cold. I was like, yeah, I'll be fine. Like, I have my hand warmers. I was literally thinking that, like, I could just fall off right now, and the bushes will catch me. I was in so much pain, and it's kind of what I wanted, right? I needed that mental push, like I had in the military, because civilians don't understand. Some civilians do. They do crazy things, but for the most part, they don't understand like how much you push yourself in the military, especially on deployments and stuff. Like, it's crazy. In like military, like, we don't think it's crazy because it's not. But when you look at through a civilian's like lens, it's crazy stuff. Obviously guys that have completed Ironmans and stuff, like, they know. But for the most part, not everyone's completing ultras and Ironmans. And so I remember going to the last aid station, and that was the last 4 miles. I had about 2 hours left on cutoff. And I was like, okay, well, I have 2 hours. I can push out 2 miles an hour, right? And I was so beat. I was in so much pain. And like what you were saying, I would get thoughts in my mind that would piss me off, or I would just replay the hospital, or I'd replay things that I was dealing with in my head and just think about it and get mad about it. And I had those ups and downs. And then before I know it, I'm like 2 miles down the road. So it distracted me by thinking about that kind of stuff. And then that went away, and then all the pain came back, because I'm not thinking about it. But I had moments like that where, I would think about Christian, and that would keep me going for like 5 miles. And then that would stop, and then the pain would come. So the last 4 miles, I stopped at the aid station. It's freezing. I don't even know how cold it is, but it's cold. It's pitch black. My headlamp sucks. So I'm like, dude, I'm going to get eaten by like something. Like, I'm by myself, and it is pitch black out there, cold. I'm hurting. God, I'm hurting so bad. I'm using the running sticks on flat ground because just every step hurts. So last 4 miles, you have like, I guess, this hill that is like the spotlight of the race. So you have to go up this hill and then down. Very high, very steep. And that's what everyone talks about. And I know, like, damn it, I have to get through that first. And so I sit there, and I must have slept at that aid station for like 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Like, and the people at the aid station, they'll put heaters on you. Made me hot chocolate.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, dude. And my headphones before nighttime had died. And so Letty gave me her headphones, but they wouldn't connect to my phone. So I spent the whole night with no headphones, no music, nothing. And I hadn't done that. I normally wear headphones. So not only am I sucking, I have no headphones. And I'm trying to connect them. And these damn headphones that are like $400 will not connect. So I don't have that. So I get there, I'm sleeping. They have heaters, hot chocolate. And I'm just like, dude, like, this should be good. You know, I can quit now. And that's a pretty good little push. You know, it was what, 64, I think, 100K, 60 miles, whatever. And then I was like, nah, I got to do it, right? So I told Letty, I was like, giving them updates. I was like, hey, don't bother coming at this time because I'm slowing down. So come at this time. And I told her, hey, I'm in the last 4 miles. I'm about to like head off, so I'll be there. And I go and I get to this hill and I'm like, all right, here we go. Going up wasn't too bad, but every step hurt. But coming down, oh my God. It took me forever to get down because every step was so painful. And it was loose rock, very steep, so people were slipping. I watched people slip and fall during the daytime, and I'm like, nope, I can't do that because if I do it, I'm just gonna go. I can't catch myself. I'm like, I'm dead. My energy's gone. I'm hurting. My knees are gonna blow. Long story short, I get down the hill. Now it's flat to the finish line, and I finished the race. And I thought it was gonna be more emotional. Like I just did something really hard. Personally, it was really hard. It was exactly what I thought this race would do. I thought I would train up for it so I wouldn't be in such bad shape. But not being in shape made it a lot worse. But I finished it, so I was very proud of myself for that. I felt at the moment I could do anything. I accomplished it for Christian, so that felt good. But yeah, I took a picture. I stumbled to the car, and it was over with. And yeah, like what I thought was gonna like be the fix just wasn't. So then on to the next thing, right? On to the next high of seeing. And I'm using this as my healing journey as a way to heal. When you say like the social media stuff, I mean, I don't even make videos of myself like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to make videos and talk, but I just felt like, I don't know, like I just wanted people to know just how much losing Christian hurt. It wasn't expected. The guilt I felt, the what I wish I could have one more minute with him, and just wanted people to know that that were not just fathers and parents, but anybody you love.
Mm-hmm.
Like tomorrow's not promised. 5 minutes is not promised. 10 minutes prior, I was trick or treating like with my daughter, having a great time. 10 minutes later, I'm getting a phone call that my son's being airlifted to the hospital. So I can't even say tomorrow's not promised. Like next minute isn't. I could die right now of a heart like a heart attack. It's crazy. And so that was why I started doing the social media stuff and it's like my way to heal. And I don't even know if what I'm doing is truly going to heal me. I just know that for right now, it's what's helping. It's helping me. And I've had friends reach out and tell me, it's helped them kind of like change their perspective in life, kind of stop and reset and think about things. And, that feels good. Because, it feels like, that's what I wanted. Subconsciously, that's what I'm trying to do. I lost Christian. I can't get him back. So what else can I do, And then slowly I had to start being able to do things with Mia again. Because the first 2 months, I couldn't do anything with Mia. Like, I felt guilty.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't go and do anything fun. I couldn't look at her. I couldn't love her because I felt like I was leaving like Christian behind.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, and like that's why I said like Letty took a lot of that burden and a lot of that responsibility because I just couldn't do it mentally, and so I just had to do whatever I could to just not go down a dark hole. I don't drink that much, and which is something that I just stopped in 2024. I used to drink a lot, and a lot of the bad stuff that's happened in my life came from drinking.
Mm-hmm.
When I was intoxicated. A lot of fights with ex-wives, drunk, And so in 2024, when I was doing jiu-jitsu and doing a lot of like tournaments and competing, I didn't want to be hungover. I wanted to have good training like sessions. So I stopped drinking, and then slowly I was kind of like, I don't need to drink anymore. And so why I'm saying that is I thank God that I wasn't a heavy drinker when I lost Christian. I didn't have a lot of bad vices that would have led me down a destructive road. Um, I worked out doing the ultras. You know, those were my vices um, instead of drinking. So I'm kind of blessed in that sense. But like I tell like everybody, it's like, you know, I could go down a dark road just like, you know, in a matter of a second. You know, every day is a battle.
Yeah.
To not give up, to not be like, you know what, fuck it. I'm just gonna get drunk. I'm just gonna just destroy my life, you know. And I could easily have done that the first like 2 months. I could have just destroyed my life, and I didn't.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think this is how I'm trying to heal. I just don't know if it's going to work. It's just all learning on the go.
I don't know if this is going to be helpful or not, man, but I had a therapist tell me one time, counselor, whatever you want to call it. He was kind of one of those like brute, honest guy, or just like he's going to say whatever the hell he's thinking. But similar conversation. And he said, you know, I don't know if you'll ever heal, but your story will heal others. And man, that was a fucking, like swallowing a brick.
Yeah.
Because I asked him, I was like, so you mean I got to feel like this forever? That's what you're saying. He said, maybe. He said, but maybe somebody else won't.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. I'm trying to be okay with that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think it gets better. I don't think you fully heal, you
Right.
know? I mean, losing a child, in my belief, I feel like it's the worst thing that could happen to like a human being.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're not supposed to outlive our children.
Right.
You know, we kind of expect our parents to pass, but it still hurts. Like losing your parent, losing anyone you love, still hurts. You know, so it's the pain is just. I don't think you're ever going to just fully heal from any loss. You know, you just learn to live with it, or you learn to deal with it a little bit better every day, or learn how to, you know, use it for good or whatever, you know. But I don't think it ever goes away. Like I'm never gonna not be hurt, not be broken from like losing Christian.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of start to wrap things up. I wanted to ask you a question too, like the people that are watching, people that are going to see it, people that you know you're going to share it with, what have you. What can people do to continue just to support this journey you're on of honoring Christian? You know, that's the best way I can word it. Um, what, is there a way to contribute? Is there, you know, what is the most impactful and the most helpful? Like what can we do? What can people do?
I mean, for one thing, it's just like I want people to understand, truly understand, and not have to live it and then regret it. Is to truly live every day. You know, you hear like live every day like it's your last. Well, obviously we can't do that because if it was truly my last day, I wouldn't be doing the things I do. But you know, and I'm not the perfect father. I'm not the perfect husband. I still have a lot of work to do, but I try to be better, a better father. I'm trying to be a better husband while going through grief. But it's to truly love your family, love your kids, and just don't take it for granted. You know, like that's what I could care less about being rich. All I want is my son back.
Mm-hmm.
So when you lose something like that, like all the tangible and materialistic things, it means nothing at the end of the day. Like nothing. I could be rich and I wouldn't care if I could just have my son back. And so until you live it, like that's what I just want people to understand. Like, man, like your job's important, but man, your kids are so much more important. Your family is so much more important. And for a long time, I mean, pretty much my whole adult life, I put my profession first. I think a lot of us do. And it isn't until, you know, later on, once we retire and stuff, we look back and like, man, I wish I wouldn't have done that. Well, it's too late now. You know, like it's done. And people have sacrificed relationships, got divorces. And I just, you know, like I said, me going through this grief right now, I'm not perfect. I'm still trying to navigate two things at once, but just trying to be a better husband, trying to be a better father, and just like really being there for my daughter and making different choices and decisions that puts her first and not my profession or me first, but her first. Um, Eventually, we will start a foundation, Casting with Christian. That's in the works right now, and we want to help like other children and families who are going through hardship, that are in the hospital in ICU, or kids that just need a positive like outlet, that they're having difficulties in their life, whether it's, you know, they don't have parents or they're just struggling. You know, like Christian struggled, but when he found fishing, which was probably the last 2 months of his life, he did a complete 180 with just everything, his attitude, his schoolwork, like the person he was, and we truly believe that it came from like fishing. Like it's just something about it just changed him, and so because I'm not really a big fisherman, but Christian found this, and so we want to give kids the opportunity to experience that don't have someone that will go take them fishing, because I want them to go out there and just be able to feel it, and maybe it helps those kids like it helped Christian. I don't know. I mean, I physically saw it help my son, so I think it could help like other kids as well. And so on May 29th, I'm doing a ride with Go Abundance on Foundation. Matt King, the CEO of Go Abundance, he's riding from Mexico to Canada. Um, he wants to raise $1 million to give to families and to people in need. And so I reached out to him. I loved what he was doing, and I just felt, I want to do something to honor Christian as much as I can. So I told him my story, and I asked him if I could ride out with him in honor of my son. And so on May 29th, I'm going to be riding with him on a 150-mile stretch of his journey, and I'm fundraising for that, um, for the Go Abundance cause. But I'm personally fundraising for Christian Strong, but it's going to go to Go Abundance. And so, you that's not till May 29th, so you can always like go out and donate if you want to that cause. Every dollar of that $1 million is going to families, and so you can go to the Go Abundance the ride, and you can nominate someone in need. And so right now, they're kind of having issues with getting like nominations. They have $1 million that they want to give away and help, but they don't have a lot of nominations. So, if they have to just go by a Walmart in town and see somebody that they feel is in need, or, stop for lunch and talk to somebody and they hear a story of someone in need, they're going to help them. So if it comes down to that, like that's what they're going to do. But they really would like to have people nominated so they can help those that are in need. So they have a nomination link that you can go and fill out. And so right now, like that's going to be the big one for me, that I think is a great cause. Yeah.
Okay. And then last but not least, you got something else on your schedule.
Yep. I'm gonna leave on Wednesday to go do the Ironman 70.3 in Chattanooga. So the reason why I do Ironmans is because of you. So I did not have an inkling of ever doing an Ironman. I wanted something hard. And so your story of doing the endurance stuff and for your healing journey, it aligned with what is my same mindset. So I started seeing what all you were doing, and that kind of subconsciously gave me this idea, like, you know what, I want to do an Ironman, and it was inspired by you finishing one. And so so I have the 70.3 in Chattanooga on May 17th. That's coming up, and then I'm going to do a full Ironman, because when I asked you about it, you said don't bother about the half, just do the full. Like, you got this. And so I have to finish the full because you said to do the full. But that's not until September, so I wanted to do a half to kind of prep for the full. So that's what I'm doing now.
Yeah, there's value in that too. I think that for you too, like, man, just there's an event you're going to enter that you're going to quit in. I don't see it. Where you actually like, you're like, I'm out, I'm done. You might think about it, you might toe that, but like, you're going to find a way. And I think Ironman's just a great example of that because, and you find it in ultra too. There was so many things during my Ironman that carried me through the finish line. It wasn't me. I met this guy on the run during the Ironman, and he was out there because he just lost his wife. He's like, I lost my wife. She always said that it'd be funny if I did one of these or we did one of these, and those people are crazy to do it. And that was his whole reason for being there. And I was, mind you, when he walked up on me, I was down in the dumps, feeling sorry for myself, all kinds of sad shit. And he tells me that, and I'm like, lit me up, keep going. And the amount of things that happen in that community, people don't just go run 100 miles or run 60 miles or do an Ironman without a reason, right? It could be pain. It could be pursuit of mental toughness. It could be, there's a couple people out there that really love that shit, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
But like, I don't. I still don't like running. I still don't. I sold my bike the week after the Ironman. I didn't care.
Yeah.
Like it's not why I'm there. But you do get to meet a lot of really cool people. And it's people that can, they might not know your pain specifically, but you can relate in that way.
Yeah.
Like someone who's done 100K, like I can relate. I know your game. You know what I mean? I know you're about game if push comes to shove. And I think that's, for me, that's a kind of community that feels better to me than some of the other communities I've been involved with.
I know, like me and you have talked. Like you're training now for something different. I told you the other day, like I feel like I'm behind you, right? Because you've already done the Ironmans and stuff, so I'm kind of like catching up. But another thing, the reason why I'm doing these hard things is not only to heal, only for Christian, but also like for my daughter Mia, right? Like I want her to know that, hey, life is gonna be hard, but you can continue forward. I want her to see that, and it's what I can personally do. It's how I can do it. I'm sure there's a tons of other things I could be doing, but for me, because I'm in the physical, the fitness part of it, that's what I'm doing. But I just want to really show her that we can get through hardship and I get through hard things and go through some of the worst things imaginable and continue forward. I want her to build that adversity and like know that, because life is just crazy and it's not getting like any better. And so she's in a need to grow up and be able to mentally get through life. And so that's another driving force. It's not just Christian, but for Mia and just for anybody that may be thinking they can't do it. Like find a purpose. Your purpose was an Ironman. Now it's something different. Like you're gonna fly and you're gonna get your license. Like that's not a physical like purpose, but it's a purpose. Like find whatever that is for you, and then just go after it and do it. And if you fail, just continue to do it until until you're successful. And man, like the feeling of doing things that you never thought you could do, and then when you actually are successful and achieve it, man, the confidence that you build that carries over in like every aspect of your life. Just knowing that, hey, I can do anything. Just from doing an Ironman race that has nothing to do with anything can transform to, hey, I can be a better father. I can build this business. I can do anything I set my mind to just by doing something like that. And
yeah, once you push that far, it gives you a different, it can be dangerous too, right? It's giving me confidence to do some shit I wasn't ready for, but but that's okay too.
I want to do a 250 miler.
Yeah. Cocodona.
I want to get crazy, but I don't know. We'll like step to that.
Yeah, let's let it play out.
Yeah, but I would love to do something to that magnitude. Just keep pushing, and to me again, it's for the healing. It's for me. It's not really for anybody else, but it kind of is. That just want people to, if it can help somebody, then it's worth it, you know.
Well, and you know, last thing I'll say is this. I had a family member tell me this, but like, so he's talking to kids and stuff, and one of the things I always talk about is my dad when I go talk to these kids. And I had a family member tell me, like, well, you know, yes, these things you're doing is for you, it's for other people, but it's also like people know your dad's name now. People know your dad's story now.
100%.
That wouldn't have if you weren't doing this.
Yeah.
You know, because that's the really hard thing about death is like if no one's carrying that their story stays with them, right? And
Yeah.
I don't want that. You know, I don't want that.
That's a big one. Like I never want Christian's name to die. You know, I want his 14 years on this earth to have purpose and to continue to bring healing or bring inspiration or bring motivation or just something to somebody. And so, yeah, like I'll always tell his story. I mean, and this could be talking to kids, man, the importance of protective equipment when you're riding a UTV. You know, he unfortunately, when he crashed, he didn't have a seatbelt on, no helmet on. You know, so there's so many different avenues of lessons learned from this situation that could help a broad spectrum of people, not just someone who's dealing with grief, but just kids. Hey, like, listen, like, you know, like y'all aren't Superman. Like, y'all can pass away, you know? That one pill that you push, the not putting a seatbelt on, you know, if Christian would have just put his seatbelt on, he'd probably be alive today. That one decision, and we don't know why he wasn't supposed to be driving it, period. We don't know why he was driving. And so that's another whole matter because he was with an adult. But if he'd have just done that, you know, like I beat myself up. If you'd have just put your seatbelt on, why weren't you wearing a seatbelt? Why were you even driving? So yeah, so I mean, those are all lessons learned that like we can push out to people, and if that saves one kid, if that saves one person from committing suicide because they think they can't go on and like anymore, because I've had several people that I served with commit suicide. I mean, I think I'm probably at 9 or 10 so far, and most veterans have that story, and you know, like I've wanted to do it, you know, like I've you know had my struggles like with that, but now you know it's if this story of like, hey, you know what, we can go through so much and we can still continue to live if you just find purpose and then attack that purpose, give yourself a reason to live, you know. And I think a lot of people they just don't do that. Right. Like they just want to be negative, or they don't want to. They think my life sucks, and it just sucks. It's like, man, it doesn't have to just suck. Like find a purpose. Like everyone can do good and on this earth, you know. Like everyone's here for a reason. You just got to find it, and so yeah, that's what I hope that what I'm doing can help somebody somewhere.
It is. It is. I think, you know, it's hard. It's hard to see it when you're in it, right?
Yeah,
But it is.
I hope so.
Yeah, and you're going to hear it from some people that it is, and then there's going to be people that you'll never meet, you'll never hear from, but it does. And it's happened to me like 3 years ago. Somebody saw something, like, by the way, I want to tell you, and it's like, damn, glad I didn't give up, so I could hear that. You know, it mattered. It mattered. So what you're doing, it most certainly matters, and so that's why I wanted to have you here today, because man, it's crazy how we met. Life's crazy in general. But man, the amount of respect I have for you and you know, your family and what you're trying to do and how you're trying to honor your son, ultimate respect, man. And I'm just grateful you came on today to tell your story. So thank you.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah, like the same to you. I mean, your story is inspiring. You know, it inspires me as I go through grief. So it's helping me as well. you know. So what you're doing is really helping, and so I'm here to tell you it's helping.
Yeah, thanks, man.
You know, so yeah, that's it, bro.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I appreciate you guys listening and having patience and grace for us, and we'll drop in the show notes where you can find Derrick on social media and also these other causes he's pursuing and supporting, so we can make sure you guys have access to that and we can support those. But thank you guys for tuning in, and it's going to wrap for today's episode, and we'll see you on the next one. Have a good one. Bye.